Hi, this is Gila. Yesterday, the 23rd of April, was St. George's Day. Now, although the patron saint of England, St. George, had nothing to do with our country and is probably some mythical figure who supposedly slayed a dragon in antiquity, nevertheless, it is a day that all those of us who are English should surely have every right to celebrate openly, just as any other national group has every right to do so. All the more so, surely, because this date is also the birthday and the day of death of our most famous English playwright, William Shakespeare. Let's celebrate some of the great contributions the English people have given the world, including our very language. This year, 2020, thanks to the slow procession of its lunar calendar, the Muslim month of Ramadan started yesterday evening as well. Muslims are supposed to refrain from food and water during all the daylight hours, which is not an easy thing to do, especially for a whole month. But they make up for it by feasting at night. Actually, I have a very special memory from some 25 years ago or so, when I turned up at a shop run by a lovely Muslim family who I really enjoyed talking with when I was living in the northeast of England, just as dusk was falling during Ramadan. The young man in the shop was just about to break his fast, and he breathed a blessing over a date. Instead of eating it himself, he gave it to me to eat. I felt truly honoured, and I asked him about Ramadan. He told me that it was about being in the desert and experiencing something of the privations involved, of having empathy for other people who had nothing or very little. His family were some of the nicest people I could ever wish to meet, and I could almost sense the godliness that seemed to be coming from inside them. Now, I've no idea what this particular family made of, or whether they were even aware of the darker commandments in Islamic ideology concerning the treatment of non-Muslims. At that time, I actually knew very little about Islam. A few years later, I wrote a letter which was published in the Times in 2002 about terrorist atrocities and the root causes of their actions. With some minor editing, it was essentially published as written, but with one important alteration. Now, the editor spoke to me on the phone, and he wanted to change a sentence I'd written along the lines of actually asking whether or not there was anything in Islam which encouraged terrorism, to what he wanted me to say, which was that the core values of Islam were peaceful and against terrorism. I asked him if that was so, and he assured me, yes, they were. So, because I felt very flattered that a letter of mine was going to be published in the top British newspaper, and I didn't want to risk the editor changing his mind, I agreed to the change he wanted me to make. Because my address was included, I received various communications from different people in response. One was anti-Semitic garbage, which went straight in the bin where it belonged. Another was from someone whom I was in contact with for a number of years afterwards, and I even visited him and his wife and stayed with them. They were living in France and in Kenya. Very nice people. And one was from a British person originating from India who sent me this book. It's called The Quran and the Kafir. It was published in 1983 by someone called A. Ghosh, and it has the subtitle, All That an Infidel Needs to Know About the Quran But Is Embarrassed to Ask. I wrote to thank the gentleman who sent this, and I did actually come out with a somewhat politically correct response at the time as well, but I did read the book. It was not easy reading, and it included details of various deeply unpleasant Quranic teachings against infidels and the history of various appalling massacres and generally abusive treatment of non-Muslims in India, something I knew nothing about at the time. So today I would actually like to thank the gentleman once more. I have no idea what his name was. It was 18 years ago. From a group called Young India, and there is actually a URL, www.partitionofindia.com, which still exists. And he sent me this book, so thank you. At the time he sent it, I may still have been a little too wedded to political correctness with regard to Islam, but it did certainly help open my eyes to the reality of some of its teachings, as well as the very bloody history of Hindus, Sikhs, Jains, and all Kafirs under Islamic rule in India and Pakistan. Ramadan can tragically be a time when some fanatical Muslims who take the particularly evil teachings of Muhammad against non-Muslims literally actually can become more active in promoting terrorist atrocities. Now, maybe with coronavirus social restrictions in much of the world this year, that may be more difficult, and I certainly hope so. But as the mythical St. George slayed a dragon that demanded human sacrifices, that evil needed to be defeated. And notwithstanding the fact that there are many good people who are Muslims, including the wonderful family I had the privilege to get to know to some extent in the northeast of England many years ago, we surely need to get our priorities right. Let's celebrate what is good about being English, or Scottish, Welsh, or Irish for that matter, and not be afraid to insist that our rights and our long history in our own homeland are vitally important too. And wherever evil is to be found, whether in horrific massacres and bloodshed from the past, or tragically within some of the teachings in a book believed to be holy by over 1 billion people on this planet, evil needs to be named openly and clearly for what it truly is, for all our sakes, whoever we are and whatever we believe. Thank you so much for listening. It's Friday as I'm recording this, so I hope you had a good St. George's Day, and I hope you have a great weekend. Thank you. Goodbye.